Greetings, I'm Alex from Barefaced, and I thought I'd have a quick chat with you, which may not be that quick, about the room, the studio that we shoot all our videos in, because we've had some comments about people saying you're in some sort of rubbish sounding room. It isn't, but it was originally. So where we are, we're in New England House, we're in level 1 of New England House in Brighton, which is an 8-storey 1960s brutalist high-rise industrial building. So the floors are rated to about 1,500 kilos per square metre. It's heavy reinforced concrete. Unfortunately, the council have rather mismanaged it. It is now deemed an intolerable fire risk, and we, along with the 100 or so businesses that are in here, are being moved out. So we will not be in this place for very long, and Brighton is going to lose about 100,000 square feet of industrial space, which is appalling. And this is going to sit here empty for quite a long time once the council figures out what to do with it. However, we are not in the basement, we're down on level 1. So what this room is, in terms of dimensions, it's off the top of my head about 5 metres that way, about 3.5 metres that way, and then there's another about 2 metres, 2.5 metres on the other side of that wall. And yes, it's concrete, it's not underground. So we're onto the ground floor, which is some sort of concrete plinth with tiles. And then on the left here, there's a brick wall, and that's to the dry riser because it's an 8-storey building, so there's channels going and pipes and everything going up and down. The wall over there is concrete slab, and then through this false wall here, there's another concrete slab wall, and then here, it's concrete slab to about here, and down to there, and then windows here. Obviously, that's not what you're seeing, so you might be thinking that this is just straight onto the concrete. It's not. When we took on this space as a part storage, part studio space, it had the worst reverb in the world. It's not that far off a cube. It's about 3 and a bit metres high, 3.5 metres high, so for people who don't do metric, it's just over 10 feet high. It's about 15, 16 feet that way, and it's about 20 feet that way. And it was very reverberant with long reverb at every frequency. You could almost not have conversations in here because you couldn't really hear someone unless you were really close, because the reverb overwhelmed everything with this sort of really long tail at all the frequencies. So what we did, we had to soundproof it. The goal was to be able to actually play drums in here during the day, but we couldn't give up that much of the room to do full-on room within a room. So we never managed to get it isolated enough to be able to use the kit during the day, because the nature of a concrete building like this is that once percussive transients get into the concrete, they tend to travel round the building. So you might be 5 floors up and hear drums, and they're coming from someone down here or the other side of the building. It travels around. The flip side of the concrete is it contains the low frequencies. So when you've got low frequency energy, it doesn't tend to go through very much. So what we did, as we couldn't give up the space to do full room within a room with stud work, we've actually, so I'll use this wall as an example, we've got 2 layers of plasterboard on here, so it's heavyweight acoustic plasterboard with green glue between them, which is it's this weird viscous material that never quite dries. It's a gel, so it converts sound energy into heat, so it damps the sound. And so the sound passing through gets attenuated, and then rather than that plasterboard being straight onto the brick in the case of this wall, we've got an air gap, quite a narrow gap so we can give up the space, and then we've got it floating on rubber studs, so they're softer than the feet we use on our caps. We did a bit of hunting, and they are screwed. We've got washers with penny washers, screws, everything's attached into roll plugs, and essentially that wall's done like that. This wall's got thicker acoustic plasterboard because we're onto brick. The others have slightly thinner acoustic plasterboard. So that wall, ceiling as well, that was fun to do. Scaffold tower, and cut it down to 4x4 rather than 8x4 so we could manage it. And then here where the windows are, can't remember exactly what we did on there. There's a lot of layers of stuff. There's definitely plywood there, there's definitely chipboard, there's plasterboard, there's rock wool. there's quite a bit of mass and thickness there. You'll probably notice if you wind back to our videos, this wall looks tidier than it did at some point because we put another layer on, and then I did some not brilliant plastering, skimming, but it improved it. I think this corner was quite messy, so we made it a bit of a diagonal with plasterboard and skimmed. And then this wall here is technically not a wall, it's a divider, but it does actually reach the ceiling. So we've got industrial racking behind there, and that's what this is attached to. This is covered with a mix of MDF and plywood and OSB, onto which that goes to the ceiling, onto which there is more plasterboard with green glue. So my logic there was, obviously we don't want the noise of all the stock that we've got in there. You know, there's boxes of corners and handles and things like that. We don't want that rattling and coming back in. But we also don't want to make this a completely solid box that contains the bass, because in a room this size, the low frequencies could build up in a really annoying way, and you end up with this kind of long reverb in the lows, which distracts from the actual immediate sound that's coming from something. So by virtue of this being relatively transparent at low frequencies, this wall, the lows go through, get attenuated somewhat, and then get caught over there and are much less likely to come back. So there'll be a degree of absorption. Yeah, so we've got a space that's sounding pretty good. Right now, as I'm talking, I can hear the ring, which is coming off the drum kit. So there we've got, there's usually one or two kits in here, often one set up. When we're shooting videos, the drums, the cymbals tend to get covered with fleeces. Yeah, usually thicker ones than that. Fleeces, hoodies, whatever, because we don't want anything ringing and distracting things. The camera is usually up here. And then in terms of other absorption, so we've got the soundproofing with plasterboard, green glue and rubber standoffs. We've got surplus sheets. So these are what's left when we've cut something on the CNC machine. We laminated them together. That one's 4 sheets thick. I think that one's 6 sheets. Is that 6 sheets? Something like that. Yeah, 6 sheets. Another one up there's about 6 sheets. So it's layers of plywood glued together to act as a diffractor. So sound going up hits those, gets diffracted. Some of it goes through, and then on top of that there's carpet. There's random stuff stored on top of that, like old gig bags or bike tyres or whatever. We've got some old curtains here. We've got some old curtains there. Duvets behind them. We've got a drum riser here, which has an old, quite heavy-duty coil-sprung, king-size-ish, IKEA-size mattress. And then on the floor here, we have the surplus fake grass from my garden. Which does make quite a difference because tiles are a real ping. We've got the tiles clear there so the doors actually move. And then we've got some doors through, which so double doors out, and also the single doors through the studio space.
Padded with carpets and all sorts.
And I think, yeah, also we've got guitars hanging up on the wall, and basses, but they're guitars, aren't they? Some shelves with vintage car magazines and such like, bass magazines. So it's not, I think that's the important thing to remember, we are not in a concrete bunker, a bare concrete bunker. What we are not in is something that has been made so that if you're saying to people, come here and spend your money recording with your band, rehearsing with your band, that it looks fancy for them. Not done that. What we've done is we've made a space that is actually very functionally effective sonically and for shooting. In an ideal world it would be bigger, and as we're having to leave New England House, hopefully we'll be able to build a bigger and better studio in the other place. But at the end of the day, we make these videos, but we are a manufacturing business, we're a design and manufacturing product business, and that has to come first. So yeah, we want to make great content for you, and we do enjoy having this space to use for other stuff. But we've got to make stuff, and we've got to make it efficiently, so the factory comes first. I've got our speakers up here that we use for PA. They're actually based off the 110, which we then used a Vital 8 PR200, I think it might be, which is a great sounding 8, nowhere near as much output as our 10s, but it's really nice and clean, and we crossed it to the large tweeter that we use in the Big Baby and the Big Twin. They're powered by these Hypex modules, so they're bi-amped. Yeah, so that's just for PA use in here. I think that's everything. Oh, we do our photos in here, so we have to clear some space, and then got the roll of zzz that comes down there. That's the sound effects. Have I covered everything, Davey? He's a cameraman.
I think so. Yeah. I think that's everything.
Yeah, got some shelves up behind Davey where we keep some extra cabs. Bit of cork on the wall there. We tried to make it a space that just works acoustically with minimal hassle, whilst also not making it so it's neither live nor dead. I think that would sound about right. It is. Does that make it undead? It's a comatose room, neither live nor dead. It's asleep.
Yeah, it has often been described by people that have been in here as like unnervingly dead at times, but that's what you want when you want to hear. Especially when you're demoing equipment, you want to hear nothing but the speaker, the cab that it's putting out. And I think sometimes, especially when it's vocalists, they're like, "Oh wow, it feels quite weird." Not like anechoic chamber, but I think that's the kind of.
It is quite. You're right. It is quite dead, isn't it?
Yeah.
You realise that when you talk to people, you hear the voice from the person in a really direct way, because that's the weird thing about anechoic chambers. So I guess, yeah, just goes to show what a bit of thoughtful treatment can do with the room. I say that just a bit. This was a lot of work.
Yeah.
This was a lot of work. And the annoying thing is we're going to have to dismantle all of this as best we can and take all the materials with us and see what we can reuse in the new space. Thank you, Brighton Council. Not very much. But yeah, if you've got any questions, any suggestions on what we should do with building a future studio, yeah, anyone with experience in this, I've done quite a lot of reading on it. I like the engineering in this. It's not dissimilar to, I mean, I'm a mechanical engineer, but obviously professionally I do all this speaker and amp design stuff. It's not dissimilar to thinking about speaker cabs. You're really dealing with the same sort of thing. You're just dealing with... No, it's actually not dissimilar at all. It's incredibly similar. Diffraction, reflection, refraction, damping, absorption, resonance, all these sorts of things. I do think one of the keys to this space is this wall. I think it's the fact that this wall is essentially transparent at lower frequencies. I think if that wall wasn't there, I think we would have real problems with low frequency standing waves just building up in here. And as it is, because it's about 2/3 of the way across the space, I think it really helps kill what would otherwise be some quite nasty low frequency boom that would build up. Yeah, cool. Hopefully that has enlightened you. We shall be back with more. We might play some music. Farewell.